Hello and welcome to our very sleepy emergency session of the post election Mary Trump show. Hey, Jen.
Hi, Mary. I've been actually awake since 7:30, meaning I slept in.
Yeah, I've been up. I got 3 hours, no, 2 hours of sleep.
Hmm.
I could not fall asleep last night.
I wonder why. What was going on in the world?
I think I was bored. I was not bored. I have this weird feeling that we're never going to be bored again.
I honestly have never had a time in my life when I was bored. I remember there was this one time I was at a corporate meeting at one of my jobs in the legal department. And this was before, you could bring in like a laptop or an iPhone because we didn't really have iPhones. And anyway, so the way I stayed not bored is I had a legal pad and I wrote out song lyrics that I'd memorized.
Okay, that's
So
absolutely
is this
fascinating,
TMI?
but
I've got one more thing. I
it's
counted the
just kind of
ceiling tiles. Okay,
off
it's not
off
relevant.
topic. It's not relevant at all.
Oh,
I
shoot.
actually
Sorry, Mary.
I no, that's okay. I did talk about not being bored, so that was
Mm.
a reasonable leap. But I mean, more like I never get bored either. The difference is like this is something we don't have much control over. Like when where we can't let down our guard ever because of events. you know, that's like even counting ceiling tiles, it can't get you, can't distract you,
But
right?
Mary, I am genetically predisposed through many years of genocide from I'm Jewish going back thousands of years. So, we never let down our guard. We're always anxious people. And so for me, I have to say, when there's something to focus on, I'm better off. Like if there weren't something in the political world or in my career or friends that I couldn't obsess about, I'd be obsessing about irrelevant things like dust motes and, things like that.
Yeah, but I completely understand the notion of such a an abundance of historical trauma, leading one to be ever vigilant. But I don't know. I don't think I ever imagined that I'd get to the point in my life as an American where friends of mine would be having serious discussions about finding another country to flee to,
I
and
mean, you make such
getting
a good point.
dual citizenship and stuff. But before we go down that road, let's kind of, I mean, I assume that people watching kind of know what happened, but let's hash through some of the results because some things have changed since we saw each other like an hour ago. um, and then I want to pivot to what this holds for us, but let's just put this in the context of the fact that going into last night, we did not know for sure if we were going to live to fight another day. I mean, obviously we were going to fight, but the terms of the fight we were going to be in looked to be potentially horrifying. And there was not only not a wave, and remember, some people were calling for a red tsunami or calling a red tsunami. There wasn't even, we don't even know if there was a red anything. And for everybody who's had the great misfortune of being subjected to what the mainstream media have had to say about this election in the run up to it, and how they framed this issue, um, even if the Republicans win and it's a small margin, that's a disaster for them. Now, I understand that it still doesn't feel good because, in the House, they only need one more seat than we have to wreak all kinds of havoc. And, who knows what Mitch McConnell could do with a 51-49 Senate. But that having been said, there is a lot of hope to be gained and lessons to be learned and red flags to keep an eye out for, of course. But by the fact that in an election year that was treated like a normal midterm, which was one of the biggest mistakes the mainstream media made, but in an election year that Republicans were, according to conventional wisdom and recent history, supposed to just trounce us, they didn't even they barely laid a glove on us, Jen.
Oh, I mean, so true. And there's a lot packed in to that. So I'm going to pull out one of the key things, which is what did the mainstream media think? And even last night, I would have been, I am embarrassed for people I know and respect who are at the New York Times as reporters who, or an editorial staff who make decisions about headlines because I don't know if you saw, and I retweeted it, but there was the front page of the Times. I don't know if it's still the edition they have out now. Like the big headline
Oh
is how
man,
Republicans made big strides or made, and I just
big early gains or
and I
something.
retweeted that with that picture of Truman laughing and holding up the newspaper that says, Dewey defeats Truman. And I said, hey, friends of the New York Times, you need some real introspection here. This has real Dewey defeats Truman
Yeah.
energy. I mean, come on, guys. Don't be a joke. You're the paper of record. I'm never canceling my subscription. Don't worry, but get your shit together. Don't be a joke. You do not want to be the Elon Musk of newspapers.
But
You
as long
can't
as
have
Dean
that. Yeah.
Baquet is at the helm,
Is he still?
I believe so, and
Okay, well,
he's been
time for him to
terrible
go.
since the beginning, and it's only getting worse. So it is a
It was
serious problem.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just real introspection, they really need to do that. So that's one piece of things. And in terms of laying a glove on us, look, to me, there's what this says about democracy, what it says about the Democratic Party, but the elephant in the room is a certain uncle of yours who the candidates, and not just him, but what he espouses: election denial, insurrection apologies. All those candidates who were all in for the big lie, all in for Donald, other than one, which was JD Vance, they all lost or are losing. And yeah, I think you can look at DeSantis, there's no love lost between the two of them. So that's not a candidate he wanted to shine. And so I'm glad that he was trounced. I mean, I was looking at your cousin Donnie's Twitter feed, and last time I looked, the last thing he said is, wait for the bloodbath. And then I don't think he's tweeted since then. And that might have been
Lauren Boebert, that was her last tweet 10 hours ago as well.
Oh my God, the biggest, I mean, I know I'm a bad person, but I'm willing to be bad. I mean, I know that I'm generous. Let me say it differently. I don't think I do a lot of bad things. I care about people, but I do have a kind of mean streak. And every time I look at the image, the before and after image of Lauren Boebert's campaign party of her cheering and everyone cheering, and then them just like hangdog expressions when they realize that she's going to lose, I get so much glee and joy that I can't stop looking at it. So I know you're not my therapist, Mary, but at some point, can we talk about why it's okay to be gleeful about that wretched person
Because
maybe losing?
she's a hideous, anti-American, viciously cruel,
unqualified.
Deeply unqualified, horrible person.
Great.
And
Thank you.
and sometimes Schadenfreude is warranted. I don't think that race has been called yet, but
I know. But
so
let me have my joy.
Yeah, listen, I mean, just she's having a terrible, terrible few hours at the very least.
Right.
But let's just set the stage here. We are looking at Arizona. Pretty much everything's still up in the air. I think 68% of the votes have come in, and in the big races, everything is still too close to be comfortable. But at least in every race I've looked at, the Democrats are ahead.
Are you speaking strictly about Arizona right now?
I'm speaking strictly about Arizona right now because they're all kind of around the same. Kelly's ahead. Carrie Lake's opponent, whose name I can't remember, which is a bad sign. It's a sign that she just wasn't out there enough, honestly.
She tried not to have any debates with
that was
crazy.
another mistake.
But didn't she I'm forgetting what her name is, but she was like the Secretary of State. And why am
Katie
I
Hobbs, and we
Katie
should
Hobbs,
know her
yeah.
name, but again, the fact that we don't, and everybody knows who Carrie Lake is problematic. But
Right.
Katie Hobbs is ahead,
Right.
not very comfortably, but she's ahead with 34% of the vote. It's still to come. I think that I'm feeling really good about one of the most important races, the Secretary of State race, which had the Democrat Fontes against the execrable Fincham, who is an election denier and a fascist. Fontes is up 4. And like I said, Kelly is up. Actually, Kelly is up pretty comfortably. He's up by almost by 5. So that's good. And then I saw that in Wisconsin the race was called for Ron Johnson, but I've seen in other places it wasn't yet. It's very, very close. And down the road, though, I think that's an important race, because I think with a better candidate, and I don't mean a better person or politician, I mean a better Democratic candidate for Wisconsin, like Sarah. I can never pronounce. Thank you. I can never pronounce her name.
By the way, I told my friend on her campaign that they needed to actually have people repeatedly saying in ads how to pronounce her name, because for months I would look at the name and it was distracting to me, and it's bad that I couldn't pronounce it, but you have to have name recognition. It helps.
You do. And I think she was a better Democratic candidate for Wisconsin.
Yes, I think so too.
I don't think an endorsement by Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren is going to get you much cachet in Wisconsin, quite honestly. So the fact that we even got that close is pretty good news for the future, bad news for right now, of course. But then we have outstanding still Nevada. And last I checked, the Democrat there, whose name I also always forget. I don't know why.
Cortez Masto.
I think I'm tired. I think that might be.
Is it Cortez Masto?
It's Cortez Masto. Again.
Hi, Charlotte.
Hello.
You are glowing. What is your secret? Did you get sleep? I mean, or is it like, do you have a filter?
I slept in until about 10.
I want your filter.
It's not a filter. That's the problem.
I know.
Come on, man.
My skin is looking so. Okay. Anyway,
hang on. I'm just like catching everybody up. Cortez Masto is still hanging in there, but I think votes are still coming in, and as usual, we don't know where they're coming from, so it's kind of hard to make any assessments about that. And then, of course, there's Georgia, which is very close. But again, thankfully, Senator Warnock is still holding on to his lead, and that's been pretty steady, unless they just haven't been counting votes for a while.
Can I just drop a footnote real quick, though, Mary?
Please do.
When Mary said, I believe this is correct, when she was mentioning Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, she's not trying to diminish their message or their authority. She's just saying, for that jurisdiction, for Wisconsin, what is the value of that? I'm a huge Elizabeth Warren fan. I think that Bernie has done so much for the Democratic Party. We wouldn't even be talking about some of the things we're talking about, but that doesn't mean an endorsement from those particular people in a certain race, I think, would help. That's what I think. I don't know what you think, but
I mean, my opinion, I'm going to keep my opinion about Bernie Sanders to myself because it's irrelevant right now. I'm literally, I am literally simply saying that there are some place, just like, I have a PAC, and there's some places people they'll take the money from the PAC, but they don't want me talking about them because it's not going to play well with the voters they need to appeal to. I completely understand that.
I get you. Yeah,
it's just strategic. And so, Charlotte, I was just saying that I think Sarah Godlewski may have been a better Democratic candidate for Wisconsin. Nothing wrong with Mandela Barnes. Just the endorsements he brought in. I'm not entirely sure, given how close that race is. And again, I think it has been called for Ron Johnson.
It has.
He was a good man, smart man. He couldn't debate. He couldn't take him on the way Gretchen Whitmer, or, I saw those debates between him and Ron Johnson, and Ron Johnson was a sitting duck. I mean, I could have roasted him, but you need someone who can do that against a really entrenched incumbent.
And that was the other thing about, Sarah Godlewski had won a statewide race before, which, is always a good experience to have going in. But that aside, I just want to check in with both of you, see how you're feeling since we've learned a little bit more since last we just saw each other very, very early this morning. So Charlotte, I want to start with you, because I know you've been on a journey the last few months vis-a-vis this election.
Oh God, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. Advising, different campaigns, fundraising money almost every single day, trying to get people to vote. I know we've all been doing that, and it's just been a very long year. And I think last night went about as well as we could have hoped. Mm-hmm. Really. Mm-hmm. It went. Yeah, you're right. It has been 6 long years. The fact that we're here this morning and there is a slim chance, not a huge chance, but there is a slim chance we could still hold the House. I don't think we're going to hold the House, by the way. I don't think we're going to hold the House, but there is literally a slim chance that we could technically hold the House. That's incredible.
It is incredible. I want to, one of the things I want to do today is sort of position us going forward. Us, the Nerd Avengers, but also us, the Democrats. And Danielle's here, but apparently she's in invisible mode. So hopefully somebody will let her in. But I want to, because I have to be honest with you, and this is I think the result of my abject disappointment at how this election was framed in the context of how the Biden administration has been framed and the Trump administration has been normalized, and how much was, hey Danielle, happy post-election morning or afternoon, or whatever the case may be. And in my view, it shouldn't have even been close. And it should have been a Democratic blowout, because not just because of the awful candidates that the Republicans had, but because of all those things I just said. We literally had reproductive rights on the ballot, the future of American democracy on the ballot, versus like second-class citizenship for half the population and fascism. So it didn't seem like it should be that hard to sell. And I'm not devastated in a way that I could have been, for sure. But winning the House by 1 seat is still having control of the House, and for some, I am irrationally angry that JD Vance won. So I don't know if it's going to work, but I have a plan that somebody pay him a lot of money to disappear, and then we sneak in Joyce Vance, who has the same initials, and maybe we can have a Senator Joyce Vance, and just nobody won't tell anybody. But yeah, I'm irrationally angry about that. The fact that despicable person is now a senator, and don't get me wrong, they're all despicable, but there's something just so slimy about him. But does the fact, and of course some hinges on what happens in the Senate, but if it's a 51-49 Senate, what can McConnell do, and does it matter going forward that the margin in the House, even if it's in Republican control, is still going to be tiny? I don't know. Danielle, why don't you jump in, since we didn't get to see you last night?
Yeah. Hi, friends. Wonderful to see everybody. And first I just want to say, I'm in a good mood. Mm-hmm. I know that it is not, there was not a blue tsunami, a blue wave, a blue, all of these things. But I think that folks just to set the stage need to take things into real deep context of what we were up against. First, we're up against history, which is that the party that is in power normally loses midterms. That's just has been the historical pattern, you know, for as long as we all can remember. That didn't happen last night. We had the pollsters once again be wrong about their red tidal wave. And I'm continually going to say this every time that I go on TV, every time that I come on anybody's airwaves, is that stop believing in the polls. Believe in what people do, not what they say that they're going to do. So that's number two. And, you know, and so I think that what we should be proud of is the fact that we are waking up to fight another day. Right. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we were all in a catastrophic downward spiral. Like, where are we moving? Because fascism looks like it is absolutely going to come to the United States. What people from Kentucky to Kansas, you know, and other states, they said no. Right. You have more young people, more Generation Z vote, right, than ever before. You had the highest historic numbers of midterm of the electorate voting than ever before. You've had historic wins, the first lesbian governor, the first Black governor in Maryland, right, the first Gen Z House of Representative. You have these wins. And so I want us not to be despondent and think to ourselves like, oh, because, you know, of course, we believe that if you have slavery, which, by the way, was on the ballot in Tennessee, and big win there, it's going to be, outlawed.
But Louisiana decided to hang on to slavery for a few more decades.
Back pocket. You never know.
You never know.
You never know, right?
It's right to work is what they call it, not slavery.
Yeah. Well, let's call it what it is, shall we?
But I think that, you know, what I want is that Democrats, we're always, you know, so quick to kick ourselves while we're up. And I would like us for the first time, like Republicans are going to do that for us. Can we celebrate the fact that their governors that they were running were all trash, right? Can we celebrate the fact that they had a bunch of election deniers that were on the slate that used, you know, decertifying Biden's win from 2020 as one of their key talking points, and they were swept. So, you know, while I agree that we have a lot of work to do, the fact is that we're still standing to do that work. And I thought that, you know, in many ways that we were going to be shellacked, just not from the polls, but by people's mood and sentiment. And I think that we have a lot to be proud of today.
We do, absolutely. And I don't at all mean to bring anybody down.
I love that.
I think what I'm, I think I'm very tired. So there's that.
I mean, yeah.
And I think I was more optimistic than most people going into this, and but not at all hypersensitive, because it's not like when anybody said, "Oh, we're going to lose the House and the Senate," I didn't murder them. No, I was very on edge, but I was optimistic. So maybe, you know, I got taken down a peg, but compared to where we could have been, you're absolutely right. And look, we would have been in the fight anyway, but we would have been in the fight with both hands tied behind our back, our feet tied together, and buried like 10 feet under cement. So this is phenomenal. I mean, think about what happened in Michigan. We turned over the state house there. I mean, which was phenomenal. We got the AG, the Secretary of State, the governorship. I mean,
I'm from Michigan.
Just remind you, they tried to kidnap that woman.
Yes,
right? Like, can we remember that they tried to kidnap her?
Guys, since 1983. In 1983, I was in 10th grade. People, I am 55 now. That's how long it's been since Michigan had a Democratic legislature.
Yep.
That's like my whole fucking life.
And you know what? One good thing about this election, Jen, is that it made people start paying attention to things like state house Democrats, because Republicans always do. State houses, attorney general races, secretaries of state. We understand now how vitally important those offices are for protecting democracy at the state level, and we cannot unlearn that lesson.
And since you mentioned those three offices, it's not lost on me that you're thinking about the three women who lead those offices in Michigan, and they fucking leaned into it instead of the whole like, well, we can't have, you know, two women, you know, running for president and vice president. Why not? I mean, understudy, like they don't care. they happen to be women, but then they lean into it. They were posted like a Charlie's Angel pose going to the poll yesterday. I mean, they're going to ham it. I mean, they're going to ham it up. They're going to own it.
What was funniest about that, though, was that Dana Nessel, who I believe AG or secretary said, I should know that, but I don't remember. AG. She's like, why am I the only one who did this right?
I mean, to me, I guess, and again, I say it too much, but I grew up in Michigan, and you never, home is home. If you're from a regional place, like, to me, like I'm here on the East Coast visiting, despite that I've lived here almost my whole life, but to watch these people with the accents that I recognize and the kind of ass kicking, straightforward. I mean, yeah, she didn't back down when they tried to kidnap her. I'm just I'm so happy. But I will say to you, having been home to Michigan this summer and seeing and talking to some Republican relatives, they were as disgusted with Donald Trump as they used to be disgusted with Hillary. And I'm not disgusted with Hillary. I'm just pointing out that people didn't get, like, when I was, dealing with people in 2016, there was a real weird hate in the Midwest for her that goes back ages and ages of hating Bill, hating Hillary. Yeah. And the feeling they have with Trump. And also, I think I mentioned to you, like, my father, who is a Republican, was shocked and disgusted about the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs because he's a former doctor. And I think they just had enough. And so I was looking at my parents, just one very small sample size, but picking up this idea that the whole Republican Party there, the old guard, doesn't like these crazy election denier insurrectionists. And I think either they didn't turn out to vote or they decided to, plug their nose and vote for Democrats, but I felt that happening. So I'm just thrilled that it played out.
Yeah. And Charlotte, one of the other things I think we need to hang on to all of that. We need to make sure that all of the things that worked for us this time, we continue to hammer away at them and keep them relevant and even make them even more relevant. I'm talking specifically about Dobbs, the Supreme Court, college loans, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many things. And of course, the terrible things that the Republican Party has done. And we're seeing a lot of the narrative today is about how the big loser here, and of course he is a big fucking loser, but the big loser of this election is Donald. And okay, fine. And I'm always happy to have him feel humiliated. That's a good day when that happens. However, this cannot be about him. The entire we talked about this last night. The entire Republican Party needs to be repudiated over and over and over again. And the reason we're here is because that did not happen in 2020, even though Donald lost.
That's right. I mean, and I think President Biden deserves an enormous amount of credit for this cycle. This is the best performance that a first-term Democrat has had in 50 years.
Charlotte, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
If anybody, pundit or otherwise, ever says to me or ever asks me, should Joe Biden run in 2024? Can I punch them? Or should I not?
I think you should.
Violence?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
no political violence. No, I know you're joking.
Oh, that's true. We're joking. We're very much
theoretically.
Theoretically. Rhetorically punch them in the nose.
Yes.
No, I think President Biden needs to run again. I think that he will win re-election. I really do. I know that a lot of folks are very bullish on that. They're very skeptical. But let me tell you something. Every time someone has doubted President Biden, he has confounded expectations and even exceeded them. Mm-hmm. We should not have done that well last night. Mm-hmm. Everything. I mean, even if Democrats had a good year, as Danielle mentioned earlier, first-term presidents always do poorly in the midterms. They just do. Their party always does poorly. The only exception in recent memory was Bush in 2002. He got he picked up a couple seats in the House, a couple seats in the Senate, because that was in the aftermath of 9/11.
Exactly.
But otherwise, presidents do terribly in the midterms during their first term. And here you have President Biden, who has been roundly criticized by a lot of folks across the political spectrum for what they deem to be poor messaging, even though I thought it was pretty great messaging, to be honest. Mm-hmm. What they deem to be poor leadership, and yet he achieved something that no Democrat has achieved since Kennedy. I mean, that's incredible. It really is. He deserves way more credit than he's getting this morning.
And you know what else? We were running against, again, I don't care about polls anymore, but other people pay attention to them. Polls that his popularity is underwater, whatever. Clearly, that didn't play a factor. But even if it did, we had enough positives to overcome it. And the other thing, inflation, high gas prices were consistently cited as the two most important issues going into this election. And we still overcame that, despite the fact that the mainstream media refused to educate people about what those things mean.
Refused.
Just refused. And in fact, made things worse. Especially adding on the narrative of the red tsunami, that there was even no evidence of it, quite frankly. But I want to talk a little bit about where do we go from here, or how do we go from here? Maybe, as we said last night, the results of this election were irrelevant in terms of the fight, right? The fight is the same whether we got huge majorities in either house or lost a lot in either house, both houses, because what's at stake is still the same. The only thing that was going to be different was our state of mind, right? And our levels of despair and exhaustion. So luckily, we should be feeling energized and more hopeful and more optimistic. So Danielle, what do you think are the most important components that we need to bring to this fight? Like, how do we define it? How do we stop making the same mistake as Democrats, not us as individuals, but the Democratic Party, which is always, oh, good, okay, it wasn't as bad as we thought. We can just relax and chill, and we'll gear up like 2 months before the election. It's a terrible idea. So any thoughts about how this fight, what this fight should look like as we head in to the 2024 presidential election, which, by the way, I think we're in right now.
Yeah, it was funny. Somebody tweeted and they were just like, good morning and welcome to the 2024 election cycle. And I was just like, can I have coffee? So I was just like, can you stop? But I think that a couple of things. Doug Jones, former Senator Doug Jones from Alabama, was on one of the cable news shows recently, and he said, the problem that Democrats have, and I'd like to see change, is Democrats rallying around candidates instead of around their values and their mission, right? We continually are like, look, we have this candidate over here. Look, we have this candidate over here. What the far right has done, and we know, and we're watching the slow implosion of it happening, is that they rallied around, Donald Trump. Donald Trump was their guy, and everyone became a mini version of him, holding up their values of white supremacy and patriarchy, and and anti-abortion and anti-freedom. And I think that what Democrats need to do is, instead of us rallying behind particular people with particular personalities, is that we need to rally around freedom. I wrote a piece about this in the Daily Beast, and I said, look, I want to stop having a ceding ground to the right with regard to patriotism and regard to freedom. We are the ones that are the patriots in this country. We are the ones that are holding up and fighting for justice and equity, and at the end of the day, liberty and freedom, right? And so let us reclaim that banner, right? So whether it is the freedom to love, the freedom to choose, the freedom to be, the freedom to exist, like whether it is what it is freedom, period, full stop, at the end of the day.
Danielle, last night I was screaming, freedom is our message.
Oh! Yes.
Fuck, same brain.
Yes. Same brain. This is us melding. But
I think we've all spent enough time together. I think we all have the same brain.
We all have the same brain. It's one giant brain. But I'm like, this is the melding that I want us to. This is the mind meld.
It's like
that
Spot's
I want the
brain.
The Democratic establishment to have, which is that stop seeding these words and these values and this lesson. Like when I want to see us waving the American flag, talking about we saved this country from the skin of our teeth from fascism, right? Because more Americans woke up over the last several months from the Dobbs decision in June until now, right? And said, oh shit, this thing that we thought could never be overturned, they came for it. That this Supreme Court doesn't give a damn about precedent. So, which means that now we have to fortify our rights in these states. And that's what they did by rejecting these election denying governors, right? They were fortifying their freedom in the states and saying, if you don't have us nationally, we're going to hold on to ourselves, right? In the states. And so I think that Democrats need to run with that message. All of their focus groups are like, they shouldn't talk about abortion. They shouldn't talk about this. What they should talk about is freedom, and then list those things down, right? The freedom to retire, the freedom to have health insurance that doesn't make you an indentured servant to your fucking job, right? So that you have...
Unless you're in Louisiana, in which case they're all for it.
Right, correct. So I want to see, I think that we coalesce, we regroup and we coalesce not around people, but around our values. And our values need to be freedom, full stop. And that's how we go into 2024.
Yeah, and that's what the Republicans do. I understand that, they started with sort of paying fealty to their God, which is quite disgusting to think about. But then it's Herschel Walker, who cares about what he's done in his life? He's going to be a vote for us, whatever that means to them, right? And our version of that is much more compelling. And I think in what you said was also this very simple idea that we need to define our terms, because I think, as we've learned, Americans have gotten very far away from what democracy is. A lot of them. I think a lot of Americans couldn't quite put their finger on what it means to them anymore. And same thing with fascism. And one of the, fascism is an absolutely accurate word to use. But unless we can put it in day-to-day, like how it affects your day-to-day life, it's harder to make that argument, because Republicans call us fascists and socialists and communists and Marxists and Leninists all the time. So it's just nonsense. So if you can find freedom is like the perfect word, because it does track with everything that we're trying to preserve here. So that's the kind of energy, and that is that's how to unify the message, because as we've talked about often, the Democratic Party is a very huge, diverse tent. So it's harder to do that if you try to get too sophisticated about it. But if you just boil it down to what is at stake here, folks, exactly what I said, the word folks for the first time in my life.
Really?
That's how I never say that word ever.
Are you serious?
Ever.
Why do you think you're Obama? If you say
no, because I'm from New York City. It's not a word we use.
What do you say? Like, use guys?
I'm from the South. We say it all the time.
I don't know. People probably. Anyway, it's not important. So yeah, that is and having the Spock mind meld brain on steroids is what we need to do. So Jen, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So Danielle, you mentioned something, and Julie Zebreck, who works on a lot of campaigns, mentioned it last night. And it's this thing about focus groups. And I didn't realize until yesterday how much power they have in terms of shaping a candidate's message. And that's a big problem because, here's how I think about it. If you're running an idea by a focus group, it's not the candidate themselves doing it. And if it's a new idea, if it's pushing boundaries, an ordinary group of people who have time to do a focus group it's not going to click with them. That's not how you should do anything. Leadership isn't about listening to focus groups. Go out there and try it. And if it catches fire, continue it. I think these focus groups are just, it's just what I read when I read the book called Shattered, a book called Shattered, I think it's called, about Hillary Clinton. And, you look too much at focus groups and you let ordinary people who, you let people who are just crunching numbers tell you what to do. That doesn't make sense. And let me just imagine like the difference. And you're not in the person who leads the focus group question, how dynamic were they? There are too many variables that cannot capture charisma, cannot capture something going, that's unusual. I'm not sure. Like, for example, and I know this isn't it seems like a weird analogy. The first time I tried sushi, I was like, I don't know if I like this. And then the next time I'm like, I'm thinking about that sticky rice again. And then pretty soon you're hooked. And it's the same thing with an idea. Shut up, Mary.
I know. I'm trying to.
You're like looking at me like,
how did you not like sushi from the first time?
Right, exactly. No, it's not that. It's just I don't understand the analogy, but that's okay. Ignore
it's about
me.
taste. It's about a new.
I was just looking.
thing.
I was looking confused because I'm tired. Ignore me.
Okay.
Please.
And you don't have to have fish and the sushi. You know, you could have things like shiitake maki.
I know
which is
how
really
it works.
Great. Okay. Anyway, that's my point. So try it out. Don't do some back room focus group with air conditioning and Venetian blinds. That is not politics. And I get it. I'm so arrogant. I've never been in one of those, but I'm just imagining.
No, you're right.
How else do you do them, right, Charlotte? You put a bunch of people in a room and you focus them or whatever.
And they have their utility. Like focus groups can be very helpful, but there's such an over-reliance on them. And they're not even done. I mean, just for all the reasons Jen just said, there's so many factors that go into it, to say nothing of the person leading it. Focus groups are like stilettos. They sound really sexy and interesting, but the more you use them, the more it hurts, right? You can't do that.
That was it, Charlotte.
That I understood.
I prefer a chunky platform heel, to be honest, but
I mean, but it's, it's this thing where Democrats have to stop. There's a certain type of Democrat who says, please like me. And people don't like that. They don't like that. They like what people like is someone who says, I know the way out, follow me. That's what people want to hear. And I think not enough Democrats have embraced that mentality.
I know the way out, and I'm going to fight through any obstacle we encounter. Right. That and which is obstacles to what? Obstacles to all of your freedoms that they're trying to take away from you. So we're gonna wrap up soon because I checked and no new results with the exception of at the beginning I mean, not unexpected but still depressing news about Ron Johnson because he's a Russian agent and he does not deserve to be in the United States Senate or in the United States. I think it's incredibly important as we've been saying that we seize this moment, we build on the energy and start shaping the narrative immediately. And I mean, personally, I want the Nerd Avengers to be kind of a model for how we move through the next 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 years. And because we need to start looking at this as a long-term project in the way the Republicans have done ever since Roe v. Wade was passed in 1973. The difference again is that we're trying to preserve and protect, not destroy and steal. So do you guys have any ideas about like what's the best way to get a message out? Like who are the kinds of people? Because I have to be honest with you, I have a great deal of respect for a lot of Democratic operatives and stuff like that, and the work they do, the hours they put in, the selflessness. But I think for a lot of people, it's sort of become an echo. They've been existing in an echo chamber for too long. And the messages become self-reinforcing and increasingly ineffective. So how do we break out of that cycle? And I'm not there are some people I would be happy to have leave the stage. But generally speaking, I'm not talking about getting rid of anybody. It's more about getting people on board to do things a new way. Danielle?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, that Democrats need to go where the people are and stop expecting the people to come to them. And what do I mean by that? I'll give my own example that a couple of months ago, I was told, by a young Gen Z person that I needed to get on TikTok. And I was just like, why? I do not dance. I mean, I do dance, but I ain't dancing for the people, right? Like, I'm not doing these dance challenges. I'm not a comedian. Like, what am I going on TikTok for? And she's like, I just think that your brand would play really well. And Danielle, it's where people are, right?
Yeah.
Like, it isn't a platform for just, tweens. Like, this is a platform for everybody. So I went on TikTok and, oh my goodness, it's where the people are, right? Like, all types of people that are interested in having conversations, that are interested in, you're figuring out how to distill your message. So for me, as a media personality, I will write op-eds, sure, but there are a lot of people that don't read. So then I have a podcast, right? I have two. There are people that don't want to listen to them. I then do 60-second, 3-minute videos because there are people that have that much time, right? And so I want to see Democrats do that. Here is our big message, and then we're bringing it down and we're putting it where the people are. And we have our ear to the ground, not in focus groups, right? But on these platforms, listening to what people are talking about and engaging with them in real time. The people, and I Twitter, it will go the way of the devil. Like, I have no idea. But, it used to be that you could stay in Twitter for 30 minutes to an hour and understand what was going on, what was trending, who people were talking to. And you guys all know that if you go on there and you're like, I'm going to promote, and that's all I'm going to do is promote my next thing and promote whatever, as opposed to engaging in conversation, nobody wants to mess with you. You have to engage in conversation. So by virtue of this administration just going on Twitter to say, hey, look what we did, as opposed to, how are you feeling? What's going on? Let me listen to people. So I think that what we need to see is Democrats not saying, hey, focus groups, we'll pay you $20 and come into this closed off room, right, with stale coffee and halogen lights, and instead going to actually where the people are and getting into conversation with them and engaging with them in ways that make sense.
We all think that focus groups are like purgatory or something, but
I mean, I used to work in PR, and I can tell you that, like, it was the thing that I hated the most, was when they were just like, well, let's get a focus group together. And I'm like, to tell you what, right?
Yeah,
like, how about you go outside and just start talking to people?
Exactly. Because, there's extrinsic motivation, which is always not helpful. And all sorts of other things. But yes, go where the people are. And I honestly think that TikTok is the next place to be. Instagram is useless, and Facebook is evil, and both of them belong to Mark Zuckerberg. So, and who knows about TikTok? But still, it just, in terms of impact,
is owned by China. So.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's probably the Alibaba guy or whatever. But still, it's. I mean, we can't do anything about that. We can just. I always think of it as being subversive. We'll use the tools that they give us to undermine them. That's what I like to how I like to think of it. Jen,
is this just like the wrap up question?
This is the wrap up.
Everything Danielle said made incredible sense to me on every level. And you prompted her question by saying, thinking about communicating with the people who can make these decisions. And there are people in various levels of authority who've asked me my opinion about stuff. And sometimes I don't have much of an opinion. I know that sounds crazy, because I think I have opinions about everything, but I have not had until last night and now, with this conversation we've had, that freedom can be the word. In terms of, if the big message is freedom, then all the stuff that actually some voters want to get into the details, if everything rolls up to that, we can think about what that means in terms of policy. And there are a lot of policy people who want to say, look, this is why you should vote for Democrats. And they've got a list of 20 things. Let's roll that up into freedom, make it into buckets, make it work in terms of messaging. In terms of candidates, I think what matters in terms of the candidates is authenticity. And that's why someone like Fetterman, he's got his hoodie. if I were a candidate, I'm not telling anyone else to go out there with a hoodie. Gretchen Whitmer's got her lipstick in her leather jacket sometimes. Just be your damn self, whoever that is.
Yeah, that's why Connor Lamb didn't fly in Pennsylvania, because he was, I don't,
and if who you are doesn't fit the demographic, like in other words, folks, there are, some great people in Florida, but Florida's not going to happen for us. And as someone said, I cannot believe Val Demings didn't get a bigger percentage of that vote. Like, I am broken about what went down in Florida, at every level there. I don't know what to say, but we got to think about, to some degree, cutting some losses there. I know that up ticket helps down ticket and stuff like that, but we haven't talked about misogynoir in these races, and it's killing me. It's like I feel like my heart feels like it has a knife in it when I think about her and Stacey Abrams, and how we have the conversation about how Black women always show up for voting and for community building for the Democratic Party, and they don't get elected. And I know maybe we'll talk about that some other time, but anyway, so I'm thinking about all these things together, but in the meanwhile, I'm thinking freedom, 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 say yes to freedom, say no to fascism, and just have candidates who believe that and are in themselves and are not, wear a coat and tie if you want to, but keep in mind that might not be the right person for that area, and take your ego out of things. And I think one last thing is, there's a reason why I think Joe Biden has been so successful is because his ego isn't in it. Coalition. He listened to people. He did the student loan forgiveness. I think that got Gen Z out. He got a coalition to help across the world, so that when Russia was doing its bullshit and about to invade Ukraine, no one believed it. They believed him. I see Joe Biden as someone who can tell a good idea, but can also tell a good group. And he'll make mistakes, but he's not going to be a lofty speaker. That's not who he is, and he's not trying to. And I think that's
unlike
okay.
Donald.
Well, okay.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, Jen, it's like we always have to be so much better. Like, nobody ever said anything of, well, I mean, people did, but it was never a factor. The fact that Donald is, just incapable of stringing two sentences together. But to your point about candidates, what we were saying about Connor Lamb is somebody, I can't remember who it was, but it's like, it's like they put together their ideal Democratic candidate in a lab, and it just didn't fly with that constituency. And Fetterman obviously was definitely the best pick, because he's now Senator Fetterman. Thank you very much. And which is great. But I think also, Charlotte, I want you to go wherever you want to go with this. But I do think it's important also to expand on this idea of picking our battles, because unfortunately, we're not winning Florida. We're not winning the gubernatorial race in Florida anytime soon, or a Senate race anytime soon. And, if we can't win with a candidate like Val Demings, sorry. If we can't win Ohio with a candidate like Tim Ryan. And, I think that the difference with Stacey Abrams is that she got screwed by Brian Kemp last time around. And the injustice of that, I've never gotten over that. Plus, just all the work she has done for the party, for this country. I know there are amazing things ahead for her. I kind of wish she had run for Senate, but she knows much better than I what she should be doing. But she's not going anywhere, which is good. No. It's just tragic that the way she was completely screwed. Anyway, Charlotte.
No, I completely agree with all that. I would say there are two big things that have been on my mind for the past 24 hours. Number one is the ground game. We have some amazing organizers. We don't have amazing organizers everywhere.
Right.
And that's going to keep hurting us the more that we fail to invest in that ground game. We were on this LPAC candidates call last week. And one of our great candidates, oh God, whose name is escaping me. I feel terrible. But she's in Florida running for the state house. And one of the things that she told us was there are no organizers here. There are no folks going door to door telling people to vote for Democrats. Same thing in Texas, especially South Texas.
Yeah.
That traditional blue area that's become red over the last 4 to 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
There are no organizers there, or there are few organizers there. So that's number one. Number two is that we got to keep the messaging simple. I love the idea of freedom as like the big tentpole message, because the big strength of the Democratic Party is that we are a big tent party. The big weakness of the Democratic Party is that we are a big tent party, right? It's our strength and our weakness. It's the ability to bring people together and have a cohesive message. We don't have to make this complicated. If we focus on 2 or 3 issues, abortion rights, education, healthcare, and I would say a broad economic message, we should be okay. We really should. But it's got to be like family freedom. That is what Democrats are here to protect, family and freedom. It's got to be that simple. And if it's any more complicated than that, we're going to suffer in 2024.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, freedom for me, but not for thee, is not freedom. And that, it doesn't work because of the word thee, but still, like that's the Republican Party in a nutshell. And if we can figure out a way to say that fits on a bumper sticker or on a t-shirt, which again, like is a project that we were doing and it kind of got lost in the shuffle, but just craft those messages, hone them, perfect them, and just get them out there. We need our version of, well, I wasn't a huge fan of Hope and Change, but it worked. But we need something better than that because we're living in much darker, more treacherous times. And yet, we are in the best position I think anybody here could possibly have imagined coming into last night. And we have so much to be grateful for. We have so many people to be grateful for who've been fighting this fight tirelessly for for years, certainly. But, as we said earlier, like since this has been going on, we've been fighting this since November 2016. We're exhausted, but you know what? It paid off, and it's only going to get better from here, because we see now that despite the prevailing forces and the headwinds and all of that stuff, we are winning. And that's like, in 2020, we did something extraordinary. We snatched democracy from the jaws of autocracy. And despite the fact that 2 years later, I think it's safe to say this country is in worse shape, or things are scary and more dangerous, I should say, than politically and in terms of, where the country is, the soul of the country is, then in 2020, we did it again. Right. So, the other thing that should be really motivating is that we don't want to have to keep living like this with our, hanging on by our fingernails. So let's keep building so we can start having the kinds of election cycles that just can give us hope and confidence that we are creating the kind of country that this country has the potential to be. So what a night, what a day. Charlotte Clymer, Danielle Moody, Jen Taub, I love you all, and I so appreciate you. You were the people, some of the people on the front lines who give me hope and keep me inspired. And now let's all go to sleep for a bit. And thank you everybody for watching. I love having these emergency sessions because they always give me clarity. And hopefully that they do the same for you. So thanks, guys. See you soon.
Democrats. Yay.
Yay. Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.